Jackson's going to come on. We're going to take some questions.
Let's do it. First question. Pascal Siakam won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Do you feel like Halliburton got snubbed?
I'm going to say no, just simply because there were stretches of this series where Tyrese Haliburton was somewhat, disengaged as a product of the defensive scheme that he was facing. And I did think Siakam was more or less as good as Halliburton. It just manifests in different ways. Like with Tyrese Halliburton, he's always going to be better than what the box score will lead you to believe, simply because of the advantage creation aspect. But with Pascal Siakam, like he's been the guy who they've leaned on for like, oh, this isn't working. We need to create a shot. Like he's the guy, he's the one guy who can go get a bucket. And by the way, in the game two win, 39 points. In the game four win, 30 points. In the game six win, 31 points. So in three of their four wins, he had over 30 points. I'm not going to call that a snub under any circumstances.
He's such a stabilizer for them and such a floor raiser. It's hard to think about teams that have their second best player. I think it's even though he was the series MVP, Halliburton's their best player. It's not that many examples of teams, but their second best player is such a stabilizer for them. It's really interesting and impressive from his
He's a pretty
standpoint.
consistent player too, with just the way that he runs. I will say he was rough in Game Five, and that was definitely an unusual one for
Yeah,
him.
he was
The
terrible in
entire
game five.
team was kind of bad in Game Five, but yeah, that was definitely bad.
Right.
I also thought that he did a great job on Cat defensively tonight. Kept stonewalling him on those like bully ball drives and was attacking the basketball and forcing him to lose control. Like Siakam was just awesome, and I think we can all admit this. I thought he like straight up, flat out outplayed Cat head to head in the series. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. And we on this show and you are not expecting the Pacers to win the finals, but if the Pacers win the finals, we're going to have some Pascal Siakam conversations, as he will now be the second best player on multiple different championship teams with multiple franchises. Like that is not that many people
I
can say
think
that.
it's just a classic example of like the simple dynamic that you and I have talked about so many times over the season in terms of just like the whole playoff riser thing is real. And
Yeah.
it all comes down to some basic things to me. Like there's a certain like size and strength element to it. There's a certain versatility element to it. Those two things are vital because in the
Yes.
playoffs it just gets so physical and teams game plan you. So if you have too many weaknesses to expose rather than having a well-rounded game, you'll run into issues. The third part of it is I'm a huge believer that like even amongst competitors, there's levels to competitiveness. I always joke about
Mm,
this, but like I would much rather play in terms of having a teammate, a foxhole guy. I would much rather play with a guy who hates losing than a guy who loves basketball. Now, I want both, and the best players of all time are always both. But like I have a hard time relating to someone that doesn't like get fucking mad about losing, like angry, like viscerally upset about losing. Like to me, that emotion, that hatred of losing is what drives a basketball player to be detail oriented and to not cut corners and to do all the things you've got to do. And like say what you want about, some of these dudes like Andrew Nemhard, for instance, but like there is like a sheer competitive fire. Like he wanted to embarrass Jalen Brunson tonight down the stretch. Nemhard did. And so, like, yeah, it's like part of that playoff riser thing to me is always going to be that competitiveness. Like, do you have the will to fight more than the guy across from you?
yeah. And the Pacers have, I mean, you could probably say that about a lot of their players, but specifically three in their starting lineup. I think Neesmith, Nemhard, and Pascal are all very much that type
Classic
of
playoff
player.
risers. Yep.
100%. Super chat from JM. Are Siakam and Neesmith the key to beating OKC? What would it take for Indy to beat OKC four
I'm going to say
times?
yes to both of those because I think Neesmith will be the primary matchup on Shea. And
Hmm.
if Neesmith can prevent Shea from getting easy dribble penetration, so that it's not like you're badly compromised right off the bat over and over again, with the screen navigation that he did in this series, I think that would go a long way. Um, Jaden McDaniels in the conference finals, I thought did an awful job of containing the ball
Hmm.
in kind of a way that was so weird. It had me like rethinking like defensive player archetypes. And Neesmith is the kind of archetype theoretically that is like he is so laterally quick that he should be able to at least, as long as he doesn't get screened, keep Shea reasonably in front. If he does, then Shea's going to be throwing kickouts to advantages that are like advantages, but not like the oh my god, he got super deep into the paint and drew four bodies in, and this is like a standstill closeout opportunity kind of thing. So Neesmith is the key to the defensive matchup. And then Siakam to me is the key to the offensive matchup because I think there's a chance that Haliburton like straight up folds right to start this series. Like that's on the table. Like he's kind of done it against Dort before, and it could be something that becomes a problem. But either way, if Halliburton's fantastic to start the series because of the coverages, I think Dagnall will audible to switching and to staying home. And if he does, it's going to become a matchup attacking series, and it'll be. I'll take it a step further. It'll be Neesmith on ball on Shea. It'll be Siakam attacking matchups, and then I think another guy that I would put as a key there is actually Ben Mathurin, because I think Ben Mathurin is one of the few guys who has the athleticism to like just just break down Oklahoma City's defense at the point of attack.
That's a good segue into our next question, which is who is the most important pacer on offense other than Halliburton and Siakam? Offense only.
Okay, it'll be. I want to take it a step further because Mathurin is obviously going to be in somewhat of a limited role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Miles Turner hitting pick and pop threes is such a huge like foundational thing. Like if he's
Yeah.
not hitting pick and pop threes, then you can run drop. If you can run drop, excuse me, not even drop, you can run out the level. If you can bring your big up to the level and not have to worry about Turner slipping out of the screen and hitting threes, that's a huge that's a huge upside to your defense. So like Turner hitting pick and pop threes, I think is huge. I would say down the roster shooting in general, shooting against really good closeouts. I think Mathurin would probably be fourth for me there. Like I think Mathurin's going to be huge. Like Nemhard to me, like it kind of is what he is. I'm not counting on him to
Mm-hmm.
be like the dominant force. But actually, you know what? We should probably move Nemhard up because if Halliburton does kind of succumb to the Dort thing,
Yeah.
Nemhard will be their point guard. And we looked in the regular season and in the footage we watched, Nemhard was getting the ball over and over again.
Yeah. I was going to say tonight, it felt like because of the ball pressure from game five, it felt like they ran a handful more of those stack Spain pick and rolls with Nemhard being the lead ball handler and Halliburton being the
Yep.
third guy to sort of hopefully do. And I expect a lot of that. A
I
lot
think
of
that's
that.
going to have to be one of their pet actions in terms of like keeping them Halliburton involved when he's being denied.
Yeah.
Um, it did seem like Nemhard got a little bit of his mojo back tonight, which I think would be key.
Yeah. I agree. Next question. We'll take a couple more before playback. When was the last time that you can remember, if you can remember at all, that both finals teams played a 10, 11 man rotation? It's kind of crazy that both teams are sort of following that same model
I
a little
know.
bit.
The Celtics were like pretty much running an 8-man rotation last year. The
Yep.
Nuggets ran a tight rotation. The Warriors ran a little bit of a longer rotation, but I still think it was like 8 or 9 guys that year
Yeah.
because it was like Looney and Otto Porter Jr., Jordan Poole. Um, I
Right.
can't
Yeah.
think of one. Um, yeah, dude, that's crazy. Like, what's been interesting though is like we all have our ideologies, and like I even have like a list that I always give out when someone says like, "Oh, what's the best way to build a basketball team?" And I'm like, "Okay, you want a skill guard, you want an athlete guard, you want a kind of a skinnier perimeter wing, a bigger forward." All that sounds great, but like you kind of two things. One, you don't know what kind of roster you're going to end up getting, and you kind of have to build your team around what that roster is. And then two, like there is more than one way to win a basketball game. There flat out is. And so like what's super fascinating is like you can win a basketball game being the Indiana Pacers picking up full court, playing at absurd pace and blah, blah, blah. You can also win a basketball game being like the Dallas Mavericks last year and like walking the ball
Right.
up the court with Luka and just like methodically walking teams down with half court offense. Like there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. Like that, it just is. It's fascinating to me that we've seen these two particular teams match up because it kind of felt very war of attrition-y at times in this postseason. And these are the younger, deeper teams that play this like kind of hellacious style, but they also don't tax any of their players that much because they keep minutes down. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of like a super
Right.
fascinating concept. And I want to emphasize too, there are guys in these rotations that like if they were playing for your team, you probably wouldn't think they're as good as they look on the Pacers. So like don't don't underestimate the organizational element of making depth useful.
Mm,
I watched Jordan Goodwin be okay in other situations, but I watched him with the Lakers be fantastic because he's on a team that just needed an athletic guard that can do basic stuff. Like you need to like with your roster draft players and go after players that fit an identity that matches your team so that in the regular season, whether you're using the 15th man or the 8th man, there's like this role that just like makes sense in your offense that like this guy's like Obi Toppin comes in and plays the same role that Siakam plays, literally.
yeah.
And it's a rough approximation of it, but he comes in and does the same thing. And because he has some useful skills that kind of fit into that role, it makes him a useful player. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Landry Shamet looked useful in this series. Like, there are a lot of players like Landry Shamet out there in the league that can play playoff minutes for you as long as you set up the appropriate structure for them to thrive in.
We'll take two more questions. This one's a super chat from Matt. Thank you for the
Thanks,
super
Matt.
chat. He says not an NBA expert, but there seems to be some sort of intangible switch or crunch time magic to this Pacers team that I can't put my finger on. Is that crazy? What can you attribute that to?
So I do. Okay. I think I'm going to. This is complicated because I think on the one hand, I think it has as much to do with the other team letting go of the rope as it does with them hitting a switch.
Yeah.
I do think that they feel the magic a little bit. Like you could feel it in game one. Like you could feel it in game one where it's like, oh, like they know. They're like, we've done this before. We're gonna do it again.
Right.
There's definitely a
Yeah.
little bit of like they feel the magic, but at the same time, like I would equate it to they play the same way no matter what, regardless of the time in the game. And there is a natural human nature piece when a team goes up by 10, 15 points in the final 4 or 5 minutes where they just naturally relax. And that when you relax while the Pacers are still playing Pacers basketball, it just kind of naturally manifests in these like easy runouts and easy quick buckets. And that's more or less the genesis of it.
Yeah. Last question before we go over to playback. The Knicks question. If you had to pick one big change for the Knicks this summer between these two, would you, Jason Timpf, choose to trade Cat or fire Tibbs?
Have to choose one.
Have to choose one.
I think I trade Cat.
Hmm.
So this is complicated, but like, do you remember when it was like game 3 or 4 when Stan Van Gundy dropped that line about how like teams run because of their point guard, not because of their coach?
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
I don't necessarily think that's true, but I do think there's some truth to it in the sense that like I watched I've watched as a guy who's rooted for LeBron a lot over the years. Like I've watched LeBron have success with mediocre coaches because of his ability as an on-court presence to bring the accountability, to bring the intensity and the experience and all that kind of stuff, and even the decision making. I feel like trading Cat has a far greater potential to bring back useful players that fit within the identity of this team than getting rid of Tibbs and just bringing in some new voice and seeing if that guy can fix all their problems. I
Mhm.
do think that there needs to be like a sit down with Tibbs though and emphasize and I would point out the obvious stuff with DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet and be like, hey, like we have to kind of embrace the times and realize this is a faster, more transition oriented game. We need to go deeper into our bench.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's all we have for tonight on YouTube. We're headed over to Playback. Again, that's playback.tv/hoops tonight. We'll be taking callers and questions and stuff for at least 45 minutes or so. So make sure you guys head over there. We'll see you guys in just a few minutes. And for the YouTube crowd, we will be back on Monday morning with our first bit of NBA Finals preview content. We will see you guys then.